Hello and welcome to the Horti-Culturalists. I'm Stephen Ryan.
And I'm Matthew Lucas.
And we post a video every Friday, so why not hit subscribe and the alert button so that you'll be reminded when our next video comes up.
And if you've got a cheeky question for Stephen, we do a Q&A short every Monday. So if you've got a question, put it in the comments below, tell us where you're from, and Stephen will try and answer it in 60 seconds.
We'll do our best.
Now, Stephen, it's a somewhat brisk autumnal afternoon.
It is.
We've got these fabulous thistles behind us.
Yes, the teasels.
The teasel, but the teasel, to tease you all, is not the subject of our video, is it not?
Funnily enough, it isn't. We just happen to be standing in front of teasel. Today we're going to talk about a very useful and ornamental and even in some cases edible genus of plants that has a huge distribution around the world.
Yes.
In fact, practically everywhere but down here. That is the group known well as Berberis.
Berberis. Now, we have been, well, Berberis, Berberi, Berberum have been catching our eye over the last few months. So we have actually caught little bits of video when we've been in other gardens.
Yep.
So the first thing I think we're going to do is step back in time to, was it summer?
Yes, it was indeed. It was summer.
It was a while ago anyway, when we came across a Berberis hedge, which we just had to show you.
Yes.
Berberis is a hedge, Stephen.
And why not indeed? They're slightly spiky, so they make a good barrier planting.
Yeah.
And in the case of this one, which is a form of Berberis thunbergii, in fact a form of thunbergii atropurpureum, and it is called rose glow. And it has this most remarkable pink variegation in the new growth.
Yes.
So it makes quite a striking hedging plant.
Now, it is midsummer when we're filming this. When would you prune this to best keep the shape, but also to take advantage of the spring with the new growth?
All right, I would prune it when it's dormant in the winter.
Right.
Because then you'd get the flush of new growth in the spring, which you could leave alone for the rest of the summer, as long as you don't need your hedge to look sharp and square. So you could leave it until the following winter and just prune it back again. That way you're making use of all of that wonderful pink marbled foliage.
Now, would you say it's tricky to work with such a strong colour in the garden?
It can be. You've either got to take it to the nth degree. No, you've got to actually embrace it and go, all right, well, this is what I'm going to do. Or you might just use it as an individual specimen amongst other planting. But here in this garden, where it's backed by golden cotinus and very loud cockatoos, it is quite a striking end to a part of the garden. So I think it looks rather splendid.
And there's lime green aeoniums and the bronze aeoniums around here. So there's a lot of different foliage going on.
Yeah, textures and forms of all sorts. And we've got a really dark camellia behind as well. So so there's a really interesting juxtaposition going on.
Beautiful, beautiful. Is this an evergreen one, deciduous one?
This is a deciduous one, so its foliage will colour in the autumn.
Yes.
So it'll go reds and pinks and whites and all sorts of weird colours in the autumn before it sheds.
Okay.
And so it'll be a bare hedge in the winter. But of course there are evergreen. There's Berberis is a huge family, and so one could get lost for the rest of your life just trying to work out which is which. But they are a great group of garden plants.
Well, I love this Berberis hedge, and thank you for Dale for sharing it with us.
Yes, and we'll have a look at another one, shall we?
We will. Off we go.
Well, what a fantastic hedge.
Amazing colour too, amazing, pinky, beautiful.
Yeah, fabulous, and one of the many uses for Berberis. And of course, as a prickly shrub, they make a really good hedge because people can't fight their way through. And I definitely suggest it as a hedge under your bedroom window to stop people getting out.
Oh, Stephen,
Sorry.
Stephen, dad jokes, bad dad jokes.
Yeah.
Anyway, now I think, are we not standing right in front of a Berberis in your garden?
Yes, and we should engage with that one as well.
All right, we're going to cunningly swing the camera around and have a look. And here we are, another teasel still behind us.
Yes, exactly.
Now, what is this Berberis?
All right, so we've got Berberis ottawensis silver miles, obviously bred in Ottawa. So there you go, in Canada.
Okay, well, not obviously, but it makes sense now.
Yeah, it does. And this particular hybrid has thrown up quite a number of sports of different types. Silver miles is known for its bizarre variegation.
Oh, honestly, here's my thing about variegation. I literally thought, oh, maybe we shouldn't film it. I didn't say this to you, but it looks really diseased.
Well, in one sense, you could say it is, because virus.
It's a virus,
Yeah,
because
exactly.
watch our
Yeah.
variegation video
Yeah.
and you'll learn that variegation is a
Yeah.
virus. This looks very viral.
Yeah, well, it's selling quite well, I have to say. So
Okay.
you're one of the small elite group of people who see it
That
that way.
dislikes it and thinks it looks diseased.
Yeah. Now,
Anyway.
ottawensis is a cross between vulgaris, which is the edible one, which we will look at,
Which we have some video footage
Yeah.
of from the edible forest.
and the other parent is thunbergii, which is a very well-known Berberis, and we'll also engage with a few of the varieties of that.
There's the thunbergia. Mr.
Yeah.
Thunberg.
Thunberg, yes.
He got around.
Yes. Yeah, probably one of Greta's ancestors, potentially.
You are on dad joke central today.
Sorry. What I wanted to say about ottawensis, though, and its forms, the one thing that has cropped up in Australia with this particular hybrid, when we get those really hot days, like 45 degrees with a howling hot summer wind, the thunbergii types tend to burn, and they look absolutely dreadful after the heat's gone through.
Yeah.
For some reason or another, I've got a couple of clients who've grown this one next to some of the thunbergii types, and this doesn't seem to burn in our heat.
Even though it's part of the parentage.
Yeah, so I would suggest that the vulgaris is tougher to the heat, and it's actually translated into the hybrid. Of course, one's got to assume that when it was bred in Ottawa, that had nothing to do with how it was bred. It's just an aside that I find these are far more heat tolerant than the Berberis thunbergii forms, so definitely worthwhile looking out for in hotter climates.
All right, now let's just do a bit of an overview of Berberis. So where are they found in the world?
All right, well, it's a big genus. I think there's somewhere around about 630 recognised species.
Right.
They are a group of plants that most botanists run for miles when somebody says, what's that Berberis? Because they are a very confusing group. There are a number of natural hybrids and things that show up around. So it's a very confusing group of plants. So its natural range actually goes from, well, I guess biggest concentrations right through Asia, but it goes right through into Europe, down into parts of Africa. It then cuts across through North America, right down into South America, and there's quite a number that come from quite far down south in Chile. And then there's also another band of them that seem to go down through the Malay Peninsula of all things, but it doesn't quite make it sort of towards Australia.
Beyond the Wallace line.
Yes, exactly. So it doesn't get beyond the Wallace line, so we don't have any native ones, but we do have one or two that have gone feral here.
Well, so this is another topic, isn't it? So like many species being taken around the world, depending upon climate and all that jazz, which are the ones that are a problem in our climate?
Well, funnily enough, it's mainly the evergreen South American ones that seem to have gone feral here. I know in North America, it tends to be the European one that has become something of an issue there. So different parts of the world, different species have shown some weediness, but that doesn't mean you should tar the whole genus with the same brush. So yes, there are some weedy ones, but there are lots of seriously valuable garden ones, and they are useful in lots and lots of different ways.
All right, now, so this one, you've got it in a border. How would you use this? Just as you have, as a sort of a feature plant?
Yeah,
what does it do?
Yeah, right.
Deciduous, berries, flowers, tell us.
Berries, flowers. The flowers are small and pale lemon, like most Berberis.
Yep.
Small red berries. Its variegated foliage is either something you love or you don't. But I have to say, the leaves do colour superbly. It hasn't started to turn yet, but once it turns, it'll go the most fabulous flamey orangey scarlet colours before it sheds.
Right.
And I would use it like I have, just as an individual plant in a border. This is actually the original plant that was imported into Australia by me some years ago.
Oh, you're responsible for this diseased specimen.
Perhaps shouldn't have said anything. But like a lot of the Berberises, it can trim up, so it could be used as a hedging plant.
Okay.
The variegation is more dramatic in the young growth, so if you did in fact hedge it, you'd be encouraging lots of new young growth. Therefore, it would probably be more spectacular in its variegation. So that could be worthwhile looking into.
Yep.
It is one of those plants with its sort of tight, congested growth, makes a great bird habitat plant, and you know, things can get in amongst it and hide from the bigger birds and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah,
so a good garden plant.
As most of them do. All right, well, I think we should wander through your garden and find the other, or one of the other Berberis that you have here.
Yeah, well, actually, I might even find you some more if we look hard enough.
Okay.
This little fellow here is a fully grown specimen of one of the dwarf Berberis thunbergii types. This one's called Bonanza Gold, and it has this quite attractive greeny gold foliage right through spring and summer, and it's just starting to get its first autumnal tints in it, so it's going to go a lovely rich orangey red before it sheds. So 18 inches to 2 feet in the old measurements, so I suppose about 60 centimetres, same width, and that's all that it will do. So if you're looking for a good tub specimen, a good plant for a rock garden, then you could do worse than planting Bonanza Gold. This particular species is one of the South American ones. It's evergreen, obviously, and it's Berberis darwinii, and no prizes for guessing who it was named after. And this is actually one of those Berberis that has become somewhat weedy here in Australia. So it will self-seed itself through the bush, and so therefore it's a bit sort of a difficult decision as to whether you would plant it in cooler climates in Australia, because it can in fact become weedy. I like its little dark green, glossy, holly-like leaves, and in the spring, although yellow is the basic colour of all Berberis, this one gets quite substantial clusters of almost a tangerine yellow flower, so it actually has flowers of quite some presence. And I've seen it grown as a hedge that's been allowed to flower in the spring, and the whole hedge turns tangerine when it's in flower. So it can be quite spectacular. It is very prickly, both on leaf and also with thorns on the stem. So you obviously don't plant it right next to your path.
All right, Stephen, so we're at your nursery to look at 3 types of Berberis, or Berberi. Is it the plural?
It's probably Berberises.
Berberises.
Yes, exactly. All right, I'll bend down and pick up one to start with.
Exhibit A. Now, we are in mid-autumn here in Australia. Look at that.
Yes.
The colour. Oh my goodness.
One of the things only a deciduous Berberis can do.
Ah, okay, so tell us, what is the name of this one?
All right, well, this is Berberis thunbergii, which is quite a commonly grown Berberis.
And we have come across Mr.
Thunberg
before.
Yeah.
He got about, didn't he?
He certainly did. Now, this one has thrown up lots of different cultivars and forms. There's gold-leafed ones, burgundy-leafed ones, variegated-leafed ones, dwarf ones.
Giant ones.
Pencil-y ones. There's a whole range of different Berberis thunbergii, and they're all tough, hardy, easygoing shrubs for temperate and cold climates. They vary in height depending on which cultivar you end up with, but the wild form can get up to around about 2.5 metres tall, and like all of the group, they get little lemon yellow flowers in the spring. Berberis don't seem to do anything other than yellow, often followed by red berries, and in the case of thunbergii, sometimes superb autumn colour as well.
So this one, superb autumn colour. So the things that this particular one has going for it are spring flowers.
Yes.
And are they sort of visible? Is it a thing, or is it almost not a thing?
Some of the Berberis, it's not really much of a thing. I mean, they're there, but well, the thunbergii can be sort of vaguely showy when they're in flower, but I can't say that they're top-ranking floral plants.
So it's more about, so the foliage is green when it's
on the wild form, but as I said, there's gold-leafed ones, there's burgundy-leafed ones, there's a whole range of thunbergii out there.
But this one, what is the normal colour of this one? Green?
Green.
Right.
Yep.
Okay.
So that one's green in the spring, summer. So you get the flowers when the leaves first break out.
Yeah.
Get the little red berries on it, and then you get this fabulous autumnal colour. It does have thorns, but at least they're comparatively benign.
They are.
And if they do go in, they come straight out because they're actually straight, unlike a rose thorn that goes in and often stays behind to cause all sorts of havoc.
So, looking at all the Berberis, Berberises, where in the garden would you use this particular one? What would you be achieving with this?
Well, it could just be a shrub in a mixed border.
Yep.
Quite good for that. It could, in fact, make a good deciduous hedge. And many of the Berberis actually do make great hedges.
As we've seen.
Yeah, so you could use it as a hedge. They can be grown as tub specimens and stuff, but I don't know that they're texturally interesting enough to use as a standalone plant.
Right.
But in a mixed border or whatever, they're fabulous, and they do have different seasonal interests going on. They're twiggy, so they make a good habitat plant for small birds. Being twiggy and slightly spiky, it gives a great spot for little birds to hide in. So,
twiggy and slightly spiky.
Yes, exactly. So I think they're very useful plants.
Okay.
And the only, I guess, issue that we've had with them in Australia is that for a long time, most of the Berberis were banned to come into Australia because some of the species are host to wheat rust. And so there was this issue with not importing new Berberises for a long time, although that seems to now have been lifted. So
excellent.
Part of the problem being, of course, that most of the time you don't grow Berberis in the wheat belt.
True. All right, what's number 2?
All right, well, this is one I actually bought
I'm going to put this down.
Yes, you pop that one down. I bought this one in from America some years ago.
Yeah.
And this is a hybrid Berberis called Berberis julianae Spring Glory.
Yes.
Now, it's an evergreen one, so you're not going to get autumnal colour. And it has quite vicious thorns on it. They're quite big. We'll show you a close-up of some of those in a minute. I won't impale myself on one as an example.
It is spiky.
It's got good, rich green, glossy evergreen foliage, so for that purpose it's very useful. It has masses of little pale lemon flowers on it in the spring.
Yeah.
It does get berries which are still green at the moment but turn black with age.
Yeah.
But its big claim to fame is its lovely spring foliage. This one's thrown an out of season stem on it. So the foliage in the spring comes up this beautiful ruby red colour.
Yeah.
So the whole plant will be covered in new growth that comes up in a really quite striking colour. This one is also a largish bush. My originally imported plant is growing in the garden at home and it would be 2.5 metres tall and probably about as wide.
And where is this one from?
Well, it's a hybrid, so it was
okay.
discovered in cultivation.
Yep.
A lot of the evergreen Berberis tend to be southern hemisphere ones. There's a lot of Berberis that come from South America. And I might add the genus is huge.
And thunbergii, where's that
They're northern plants, so they come from the northern hemisphere. Thunbergii, I think from memory, is Asian. I have to say, our final one, which I think is a particularly interesting foliage plant.
Vicious.
Yeah, well, it's prickly around the leaves, but it's not actually that prickly, really. This is actinacantha.
Yep.
Berberis actinacantha. This one is Chilean, and it's a small sort of irregular shaped shrub. The leaves have this slightly greyish colour to them, which I quite like. And I love the new foliage on this lovely sort of coppery coloured new leaves.
And it's sort of alternating the new leaves in...
Yeah, in amongst some older ones. So it's got some new
ones.
stuff coming up at the same time.
So it's got this kind of... Is that its form? It's going to sort of do these quirky twists.
Yeah, it's an irregular sort of... Some nursery people will call this elegantly arching. Some home gardeners will say straggly. So it's not the tidiest of bushes, but that sometimes is perfectly legit. I think, you don't want everything to be little green plum puddings in the garden. So I quite like the fact that this has a little bit of a mind of its own.
There you go. Well, I think having a mind of one's own, what we're going to do now is step back in time. And a few months ago in summer, we were at the edible forest out in the Yarra Valley. And while we were filming, you spotted a Berberis lurking. Let's have a look at that.
Well, when it comes to Berberises, they're not always pretty, although I have to say this one in the autumn can colour beautifully, and when the berries are ripe, they're a lovely sort of coral pink colour. But this is Berberis vulgaris, and it's the most commonly grown of the edible Berberises. Many of them do have edible berries, but this is the one that people look for. Not looking all that exciting at the moment, but it's got its little berries just starting to form, and they'll become edible once they get fully ripened. And it's a shrub up around about 2.5 metres or so. Like most of the group, it has a few prickles through it, so you do have to be a bit gentle handling it, but a very tough and hardy shrub, and well worth looking out for the edible ornamental garden.
All right, another Berberis, Berberisis.
You're not going to get this right at all, are you? This is another one of the thunbergii types, and it just goes to show the diversity within the group.
Right.
So this is Berberis thunbergii Helmond Pillar.
Yeah.
So it's a obviously pencilly form. It's not a particularly neat and tidy pencilly form, I have to say, but it has very good burgundy foliage.
Yeah.
It colours well in the autumn before it's shed, so it'll go quite nice. It'll become a pillar of sort of orangey red. It does get the little yellow flowers, and it's also got the little red berries just starting to form in it at the moment.
Will the berries stay after the foliage has dropped?
They often hang around a wee while after the foliage has dropped. Now, because it's an untidy plant,
I've got to show people just how awful that tie is. Sorry, this is very technical.
Yeah, and it's not me. I didn't do this.
Look at this.
But yeah, somebody decided it was getting in the way, so they've tied it up. It's not actually a very pleasant way of managing the plant, but it's actually, they've got the right idea, because what it is because it's slightly untidy, if you tie it in, you can keep it nice and neat and tidy. But what I use, and we'll show you the one at home, is fishing line, and you don't see it at all. So every so often I just go around and tie in any wayward branches with some fishing line, and it stays quite tidy.
Okay, I'm going to say I'm more of a natural kind of guy, and I like things to do what they should. So tying something with twine seems to me a little artificial. If you didn't, does it just sort of lollop? What does it do?
Well, it sort of falls out a bit. It just looks untidy and ungainly.
Right.
So, you know, you should keep it sort of neat and tidy. I might add something I saw done to it in North America, which all of you North Americans stop doing it, please, is they tend to cut the top off it. And so you've got this thing that stands up there and then they cut the top off it and make it flat. And I saw it in quite a lot of gardens when I was over there, and I thought I can't see the point in doing that. But anyhow, fortunately, nobody here that I've noticed has taken on that habit. So there you go. So, but yes, a little bit of fishing line. You can just keep it neat and tidy. And the whole point of Helmond's Pillar is, in fact,
Making
to
a
give
pillar.
that, yes, to give that sort of verticality. Because apart from some of the dwarf conifers, there's not terribly many smaller shrubs that give you that sort of narrow look.
Good point. And this one is about 7 feet, sort of 2.5-ish
Yeah,
meters.
which
How-
is sort of about
That's
more.
as far
Well,
as
the
it'll
one
go.
at home is fractionally taller, but not by much.
All right,
So
well-
they're getting up to about full size.
We should go and look at that one.
Good idea.
Off we go. And Stephen, we're finishing where we began.
Sort of.
Sort
yes.
of.
Yes. With my specimen of Berberis thunbergii Helmond Pillar, having seen how it was very badly tied together at the nursery, and I don't take credit for that, this is one that I have prepared earlier, and there is actually fishing line holding this whole plant together.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
I'm still not sold. I mean, if you've got to use nylon thread to make something do what you want, I don't know. It just doesn't seem right,
Oh,
Stephen.
yeah, but you're also the sort of person that will say bonsai is cruelty, variegation's a disease.
Well, it is a disease.
Yeah, and you know, so it's just another horticultural practice.
Okay.
So, you know, it's like me painting my miscanthus stems red in the winter.
Oh, don't. That's been very triggering for some people.
Yes, it has rather.
Well, I've enjoyed this romp through Berberis, Berberi, Berberum.
Yes.
Because it's such a useful shrub. group
They
of
are,
plants.
and unfortunately, that's the way they're seen.
Mm.
Because when you say something's useful, it's not always seen as highly ornamental. You know, it's a workhorse type group. But there are some really pretty Berberises,
Mm.
and there's a lot more to them than most people realise. And so I think there's great horticultural potential in many of them.
Well, there you are. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this video. Now, if you want to know what we're doing next week, you'll have to hit subscribe and follow our continuing adventures.
Yes, please do. And don't forget to send me a question if you'd like me to answer it on our Monday shorts. And don't forget to tell me where you're from.
It does help with your cunning reply.
Yes, exactly.
Well, until next week, we look forward to seeing you.
Bye all.